everyone. Can you all hear me at the back? Okay. So thank you again for your time here. My name is Manoj Nimbalkar. I'm a global vice president of a business called Digital Solutions in Weatherford. So just to give you guys a quick overview of what Weatherford is, where do I point this? Sorry. Okay. So we are a leading energy services company. We are based out of Houston and in about worldwide in about 75 countries. We have about at least about 18,000 people operating worldwide. And our focus is to provide energy services mainly in the upstream side of oil and gas. The chart that Rick presented earlier was talking about upstream, midstream, and downstream. We are focused more on the upstream side of the value chain. In terms of what we provide as a portfolio, right, we provide services across the life cycle of the well and the producing assets in drilling and evaluation, well construction completion, and then finally production with artificial lift. The business that I represent goes across all of these in providing digital solutions to our customers directly, which are your international oil companies, mid-sized companies, as well as national oil companies worldwide. Now, sorry, it's not moving. Okay. When you think about the upstream oil and gas industry, right, the key challenges that we face as an industry are really categorized into these four. The first is how do we make sure that we enhance our production from our existing assets as well as the new assets that we start exploring. The second thing is from our existing assets, how do we maximize our uptime, which means that we don't have a lot of failures in our equipment. That's the second challenge. The third piece is improving efficiency and efficiency across all of our operations. And when we think about decarbonizing, that particular piece plays a very important role in decarbonizing our operations, improvement of efficiency, because that's really the low-hanging fruit. Rick talked a lot about new methods of providing power sources to FPSOs. But when we think about the existing FPSOs with the diesel engines, what can we do in terms of improving efficiency so that we go with a net carbon reduction, right? And I'll give you some examples of that. And eventually now, carbon neutrality is the key challenge that the industry is facing. Can you move to the next slide, please? So in terms of our business itself for digital solutions, right, apart from providing all of the flow measurement, automation, and software to our customers, the new trend or the new focus as far as ESG is concerned really focuses around, what can we provide to our customers in terms of energy transition, whether it's to do with geothermal energy, renewable energy, or in terms of the hydrogen economy. And in terms of carbon neutrality, what solutions can we provide to reduce their energy consumption itself, right? Bringing savings in their energy consumption, carbon capture and sequestration, as well as the GHG or the greenhouse gas mitigation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some of these examples as we go through. Our belief is that digital platforms, right, for our industry play a key role of a catalyst to improve those efficiencies such that the net carbon reduction happens in an effective fashion. We do this through combination of software and automation platforms that grab data in real time from every operation, whether it's drilling, production, or completion, and then merge that through automated workflows and process it with both physics-based and artificial intelligence-based algorithms to then provide the answers to the key challenges that I talked about earlier. Now, by doing so effectively, we are able to reduce the emissions from all of the three scope types that Rick mentioned earlier, the scope 1, the scope 2, and the scope 3 as well. So I'll give you some examples of how we have helped our customers in reducing some of these emissions. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, so the first example is really in terms of drilling. And you saw the slide that Rick mentioned earlier about the FPSO and where the majority of the carbon emissions are actually coming from these diesel engines. So what we did was we implemented our drilling optimization platform, which grabs the real-time data coming from all the rig sensors of the oil rig, as well as the tools that are used for drilling. And we combine that with performance analytics that could measure how much of efficiency was there for every operation, and correlated that to the fuel consumption or the utilization of the diesel engines. By combining all of these data together into the single platform, we were able to identify the inefficiencies. And in terms of a drilling operation, when we think of inefficiencies, these are the inefficiencies that cause a non-productive time, which is a standard term used in our industry, as well as something called as invisible lost time. Right? That invisible lost time is something that is caused due to operations efficiencies, which are not caused because of failures of equipment and they are not captured properly. But using high frequency data and a combination of low frequency data of the diesel engines, we were able to identify these inefficiencies in NPT as well as ILT. And overall, by analyzing that data, we were able to help our customer reduce almost 8% of their GHG consumption. So that's a great example of how digital solutions with the combination of multiple sources of data can help in reduction of the carbon footprint itself. The second example that I want to provide, if you go to the next slide, please, is the autonomous control that we use for artificial lift, right? And this is an example of how we use the next generation controllers. If any one of you have driven across Texas or parts of the United States, you will see artificial lifts such as I've shown you over here. And majority of these times, most of these are operating on a daily basis. And we have our customers, pump operators, usually go to the field and check on how the pumps are operating. And at times they make changes to the operating conditions on the controllers itself. A lot of times the controllers are automated, but there are times when there are changes to the well or the behavior of the mechanical equipment itself, for which the operators have to go to the field and do this. Now, by implementing autonomous controllers, what has happened is for this particular operator, not only were they able to reduce their failures of the equipment by 15%, we were also able to retrofit some of these next generation controllers to existing wells. So when I look at the failure reduction and the retrofit, that reduced the scope 3 emissions part of it, which is completely indirect to the operation. But the key one was the one that you see in the center, which is the 70% well site visit reduction itself. And that reduce the way in which you are spending or you are adding carbon to the environment by driving all the way to these assets. Now, when you think about this in small fields in the US, it adds substantially, but when you extrapolate it to a lot of the fields that are in the national oil companies across the globe, it adds to a significant number. Now, you can think about it in terms of a producing well. Typically, these wells produce for 10 years, 20 years, and so on. A slight reduction, even on a daily basis, adds a lot throughout the life cycle of the well. And that's why even these small changes in the reduction of carbon help a lot in the life cycle of the producing asset as well as the producing well. My next example, if you go to the next slide, is what we call as power regenerative variable speed drives. Now, again, for artificial lifts, there are drives that are used to vary the speed and the frequency of the artificial lifts. What we have started looking at is, especially when during the downstroke of the artificial lift, we are able to capture the energy that comes in downstroke, which is obviously due to gravity, and capture that energy so that it could be sent back to the grid, converting it into energy and sending it back to the grid. But what we have also done is innovated a product that can actually save that regenerated electricity at the wellhead itself, so it could be consumed back for the upstroke when the artificial lift moves upstairs, right? And why is this important is because a lot of times our customers want to utilize the regenerative capabilities, but because they don't have a capacity or a capability to send the regenerated electricity back to the grid, almost 80% of our customers don't use these. So by adding the capacitor banks at the wellhead itself, we have created a product where we've helped our customers reduce the utilization of the electricity, again, scope 2 reduction. So those were some of the three examples that I wanted to talk about. And if you go to the next slide, I've talked a lot about the technologies, right? But as an industry, here's what we are always thinking and talking about. I mean, it's about the people and processes, right? I mean, the first thing is really our receptivity to emissions, that mindset needs to mirror that of safety. Safety is very key to all of our operations. It's the primary responsibility for everybody that works in upstream oil and gas, and that's the highest priority. And if that same mindset is blended for ESG as well, that will bring in small but good changes in the industry. The second piece is just as we do a very elaborate job of data management and governance for our upstream data, the same level of elaboration and governance needs to be applied to all the ESG data as well. Because without that, we will not be able to create a baseline of where we are at today and where we want to go and how we can change. And that's really important in terms of data management. And the last but not the least is really the competency of the people in our industry. I mean, when we think about digitalization, we have started training a lot of people on machine learning and artificial intelligence. Now, we can't hire thousands and thousands of data scientists in our industry, but the approach that we have taken, for example, is we've hired data scientists, but we've started training our petroleum engineers on data science. A similar approach is something that we are working on for all of our existing petroleum engineers, where we have started training them on all of these aspects of new energy and ESG. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.